Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Today I want to talk about two issues that impact on the health and welfare of children, one overseas and one within Australia. I first of all want to raise the issue of orphanage tourism, because I note in schools in my electorate, across Perth and no doubt across Western Australia, we're seeing a rise in the phenomena of orphanage projects that are being embraced by schools, usually private schools, who are taking their senior students to volunteer in orphanages in Asia. Now, I speak mainly here about Cambodia because this is the area to which I have had some exposure. Indeed, on a recent parliamentary delegation to Cambodia, I was quite shocked and horrified to learn what was indeed developing in Cambodia as a result of this growing orphanage tourism. Now, I want to acknowledge that I absolutely understand that these schools are acting, and the schools and the parents and the students are acting with the very best of intentions, that the children, the students, usually in middle high school years, go over to, in this case often Cambodia. They undertake some maintenance and building work, and they spend time playing with the children in the orphanages. Now, schools see, understandably, these visits as an opportunity for their students to engage in philanthropic activity to help others, but also, importantly, to gain a perspective on their privilege. And I think these are very worthwhile aims. We want our young people to be good global citizens and to have a very strong sense of the need to help others that are less fortunate than themselves. But I am deeply concerned, after having several briefings now from Friends International and from Save the Children Fund, that indeed what we are doing unwittingly with this exercise is indeed creating this business model of tourism, orphanage tourism. Now, there are around 300 registered orphanages in Cambodia and hundreds more that are not registered. And the really frightening fact is that an estimated 75% of the children inside those orphanages were not orphans at all or had one or more living parents. Now, it is not the case that these are situations where parents are simply incapable of providing for their children, although we do recognise that, particularly in rural Cambodia, there is massive poverty. But what those people that, through Save the Children and Friends International, tell us, that parents are actually being pressured to put their children into care to ensure orphanages have their population, that they have their basic product, and that the operators of these facilities then rake in the money from well-intentioned volunteers, both from schools and from the general population. The majority of these orphanages in Cambodia are owned and operated by foreigners, and the concept in Cambodia is that it was an introduced one. There's certainly a misconception about the people don't care about their children because they give them up to orphanages. This is not true, and a great deal of misrepresentation is made to the parents about the type of life that will be offered to their child in that orphanage. The orphanages regularly use children to raise money by handing out flyers and putting on shows, and in some they try to encourage the kids to look malnourished, to encourage donations, and there are many, many other tricks involved in the whole process. And there is another problem, of course, as you have this constant stream of well-meaning people coming through to these orphanages. These kids, without the support of a family, obviously gain attachments to those people that come through. Now, the psychological damage that has been done by children having this constant stream of people that come, they form a bond, they leave and are replaced with someone else is really quite horrific. And I really do think that we have to ask our school community and the broader community to really think very deeply about what the unintended consequences of your well-motivated actions are here. And we don't want to discourage schools from visiting foreign countries, from visiting third world countries, or indeed from being involved in assisting those countries raising money. Can I just, by contrast, talk about another project which I think is one that is actually very worthwhile, and I want to commend those schools in Perth that are involved in the Anchor project. And this is a project where schools, and often quite working class schools like Morley Senior High, adopt a sister school relationship with a Cambodian school in a particular province, and the kids then raise money, and that money goes over to those schools, and the school community determines what they are going to spend that money on. And I was very, very proud to visit a school just outside Phnom Penh, where I arrived to see in great big letters, Morley Senior High School toilet block. And this had been a very important development because young women, once they reach puberty, are very reluctant to go to school if they do not have access to toilets. So the introduction of a toilet block funded by the kids, the fundraising activities of the kids at Morley High, has had a very real consequence on the ability of girls to maintain their education in that area. They also they've raised around $30,000 for the toilet block, for the Morley Senior High School computer room where kids have got computers, and for a variety of other science equipment that has enabled the school to offer programs that they would be otherwise be unable to do so. But this is all being done in the context of the traditional family structures, that children are being helped from poor environments, are being helped to have their education without those children being used as a business model for really some pretty unethical behaviour. So I do think it's important that we reflect on our actions and what our well-intentioned actions can sometimes do, and I urge schools to look at alternative processes like the Anchor project, where you can in fact provide that assistance, get an enormous amount of satisfaction about helping a school in Cambodia without having this destructive impact on the fabric of society and on so many young people. And I know that my friend and colleague, the member for Canberra, is equally concerned about this, as I understand is Senator Linda Reynolds, and I hope that we can get together and perhaps work with the schools to perhaps get them to understand that there is a better model, there is a less destructive model that is out there where their students can get the benefit of understanding more deeply another culture, of providing financial assistance without being a destructive force. Now, the second issue of the welfare of children that I want to raise relates to the unintended consequences again of a change in the childcare package policy. So the government has been very proud of its new childcare policy and its the packages that it is putting forward in their Jobs for Families package. Now, this unfortunately is going to have very, very substantial consequences for Aboriginal communities across Australia, and I particularly want to focus on Fitzroy Crossing, where Emily Carter and June Oscar have led the development of an amazing early learning centre and a child parent centre through the their Bargawi Centre, which is an absolute standout in providing a deeply engaging environment for young children to ensure that young Aboriginal children from some of the most disadvantaged communities in this country actually are getting their developmental needs met. Now, we all understand, and Fiona Stanley has put this very profoundly yesterday in a video to members of this place, that during those early years, those first 3 years of life, the time where a child has its greatest neuroplasticity, this is the time where we must ensure that children are being exposed to the stimulation in a stimulating and nurturing environment. And through that, they develop the neural architecture that enables them to have a chance to succeed at school. It is without doubt the time where you need the clearest intervention. It is the time where you get the best cost-benefit return, because you are laying down that fundamental architecture of the brain that will last with the child for the rest of their life. And if we don't get that right, then the ability for us to really intervene through the time of formal education becomes highly compromised. We all know that. The science is beyond doubt. Now, by introducing increased standards for the activity test means that for the average child in Fitzroy Crossing, from currently having access to 20 to 24 hours a week of this stimulating, nurturing environment, that those children will now be reduced to around 10 to 12 hours a week. Now, this is a massive backward step. The activity test is just not going to work in these Aboriginal communities. What we are trying to do here is to break that cycle of intergenerational poverty, and to say you can only put your child into these childcare centres if you're out there looking for jobs or working or doing something like that, is to totally miss the point that we've got to have a strategic intervention here in these communities. Now, I know that the government is saying that, oh, well, we've got this other packet of money, we've got this other magic pudding, the Community Childcare Fund, which can be utilised, but that can only be accessed if you have a plan that shows after 3 years you won't need access to those funds. Now, we're not going to turn around the situation in Fitzroy Crossing or in any other remote Aboriginal community in 3 years. This is something that we have to stick at for the next 10, 15, 20 years to break that cycle, to ensure that the kids that are coming through are able to get a good quality education, that they are developed to the point where they are able to seize the opportunities that we can offer them at school and post-school. So this is a fund. The magic pudding at the side is not going to be the answer to this problem. But I really urge the government to look at this again and to ensure that these changes to the activity test do not apply to these Aboriginal communities, because it will undermine this very positive work that is being done by people like Emily Carter and June Oscar in Fitzroy, people that are actually showing leadership and going out there and really wanting to build social sustainability, social resilience within their communities. Thank you very much.